Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to Saturday Stories with Mike Thomas. How you doing, buddy?
Good, brother. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you for coming on this morning, man.
Thanks for having me.
Heard your story a few times, man. It's a pretty powerful one. So, everybody, this is Mike Thomas. Mike was my very first sponsor when I came to Springfield, and I met him um, at the hall. And honestly, I didn't like you, Mike. When I first started hearing you talk, I was like, "Who is this guy? This arrogant." I'm like, but then after I kept, I was just seeing a part of me maybe I didn't like. But man, I love you. You've been a very big influence in my recovery. Um, what was about a month after I met you when you almost got in a fight with that guy at the hall. And I'm
Some
like,
things never change.
I kind of like this guy, right? And so then I asked you to be my sponsor, and then we did what for a couple months, and then I wouldn't do what I was told, so you fired me. But imagine that.
Happens to all of
Yeah,
us.
it's been a good ride with you, man. You're a great friend of many, and you do a lot in the recovery community. So I appreciate you being here.
Thanks.
Um,
Appreciate
I'll
it.
go ahead and I'll pray us in, and I'll let you get started. Heavenly Father, thank you for this morning. Thank you for my brother Mike. Thank you for this opportunity to speak of your glory, Lord. Um, thank you for the friendship of Mike. He has been a great influence to me and in my recovery and many others in this city. Lord, I know you've touched him in many ways and with his walk, and I just pray for hope and healing for anybody who hears this testimony this morning. Lord, it's a powerful one. Lord, and we can't do it without you. And we don't want to. It's your son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, brother, take it away.
Well, Craig, thanks, man. Thanks for the opportunity. And I tell you what, I just wanted to acknowledge you and thank you for doing this faithfully. I know it's not always easy to corral people and get them to commit, and so it's been cool to watch you do this. And
Thank you.
even though I didn't get to sponsor you, it's been cool to watch you grow and stay committed to your walk and become a part of the church. And
Yeah.
so anyway, yeah, I appreciate the opportunity of being here. So let's get right into it. My sobriety date is April 16th, 2014. So next month, by the grace of God, I'll have 12 years of uninterrupted sobriety, which is crazy to say out loud. Um, I was raised in a small town in Southern Illinois, about 2 hours from here. My parents divorced when I was 2 years old, and they both quickly remarried and started having families. So from an early age, I never felt like I belonged. I never felt good enough, right? I just always remember having all these insecurities, and from an early age, way before I ever found drugs and alcohol, right? And especially on my mom's side, her and my soon-to-be stepdad were heavily in alcohol. So from an early age, I can remember lots of violence in the home, yelling, screaming. Some of my earliest memories as a young man were taking my younger siblings and hiding them in the other room because my mom and stepfather were yelling and fighting, fist fighting. So, the cops in and out of the house. So as you can imagine, as a kid, like, I don't know what the heck's going on. A lot of confusion and just uncertainty. And I never felt safe, right? No matter what was going on, I never felt safe because, the adults in my life, they would say one thing and do another, right? My mom was notorious for saying, "I'm never going to let him come back." And next week he's back, right?
Hmm.
And that just went on and on and on. So, I was doing everything I could to stay out of the house, right? I'm playing outside all day. 12 years old, I found drugs and alcohol, right? The older kids in the neighborhood, they were smoking pot out of a can. And, I just want to be a part of, right? I want to feel better. And it did exactly what it was supposed to do, right? Immediately, I felt like a different person, right? All of my problems went away. I wasn't so fearful, and I was accepted by the kids in the neighborhood. So, around that same time, ironically, my mom started to get sober because she had like 4 DUIs. So she began to try to enforce some rules and structure in the house, and I'm super rebellious, super defiant. So I'm sneaking out the window, I'm running away, I'm doing all the things we do. So from the age of about 10 to 13, I was in and out of behavioral psych places and juvenile lockup, and for petty stuff, breaking into cars, breaking into garages, not going to school. Right. I would say I was going to school and leave out the front door and then climb back in my window and go to sleep. And, just crazy stuff. So, my mom would try to enforce these rules, and it just pushed me further away. Right. It just made me stay in the streets more, gravitate towards the guys down the block more. And, the lifestyle just continued to progress, right? The fight in the neighborhood, getting brought home by the cops, just all that petty juvenile stuff that a lot of us, know the story, right? So I guess I'm 15 years old, and I'm on probation, and probation was chasing me down. They finally caught me, and it was either go back to juvenile lockup or go to rehab. Well, that's an easy answer, right? I want to go to rehab.
Yep.
So I go to rehab, and I definitely wasn't ready to change. I was court ordered there, and pretty quickly, I don't know exactly when, but pretty quickly after getting home from rehab, I started using drugs and alcohol again, right? And by this time, not only am I using marijuana and alcohol, I'm experimenting with methamphetamines. I'm doing some ecstasy. I'm eating some shrooms. My addiction began to progress pretty quickly. But I couldn't see anything wrong with what I was doing because the sense of belonging. I had friends. Right, they were my friends, and I wasn't that insecure, fearful little kid anymore, right? I was beginning to create this image and this facade that that would serve me pretty well for a while, right? I had a reputation for fighting and lying and stealing, and you really didn't know what I was going to do, right? I was kind of that guy at the party that they would say, "Hey, don't go in that room. That's my dad's stuff." Well, I'm breaking into that room to see what's in there, right? And that was kind of my MO. And or hey, don't take the car. My mom don't want us to drive the car, and I'm trying to get the keys to the car, even though I don't have a driver's license. And that was just my mentality, right? If you told me not to do something, I was trying to figure out how I was going to get away with doing that thing. And today, I can say this: by the grace of God, I didn't get away with much. You'll hear about later. I started going to jail more. But at the time, I'm like, man, I'm just unlucky, right? I just cannot get away with anything. So, I ended up going to alternative school. I got kicked out of school in 6th grade for fighting and having drugs in my locker. And, instead of that being a wake-up call, like now I'm surrounded with guys and gals that are just like me, right? They're defiant. They're using drugs and alcohol. They don't care about much at all. I really had a problem with authority and all that stuff, right? So, alternative school, it was all right. It was like any other commitment in my life. I couldn't stick with it. So in and out of juvenile lockup, I go to rehab. My alcoholism and drug addiction are progressing. And my family's, at their wits' end because I keep lying, cheating, stealing, and they can't figure out what to do with me. So I end up catching my first adult felony right when I turned 18. And I was so, ego-driven and prideful and just arrogant. Instead of waiting to see if I could get probation or something, I told the judge at my arraignment, "What's the state offering?" And they gave me 3 years. I took it. And, I still had that idea in my head that this was cool. Like, getting in trouble and lying, cheating, stealing, fighting, doing drugs, chasing girls, chasing money. Like, this is who I am.
Right.
It was a badge of honor in a way, right? And the other thing is, all those guys I came up with, they're doing the same thing. you know. The other thing that was complex, being from a small town, you know, I knew cops that would party. You know, I knew people that were business owners that would do cocaine on the weekend. So in my mind, at this time, at 18 years old, I was convinced everybody in the world does something, right? So that would allow me to justify and rationalize my own BS, right? Everybody does something. You're popping Xanax, you're doing this. Little did I know that there are real sober people in the world, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, I would visit 12-step programs because probation would make me go there, and I would do exactly that, Craig. I would judge everybody in the room. I would look at all the differences. I would convince myself that I'm not as bad as that person, and I would go back out. So, you know, first time in the penitentiary, I remember getting there, and I had some friends that were already there. So, you know, it wasn't the big, bad, scary stuff we see on TV, but there were some wake-up calls. You know, I remember the loneliness, right? I remember, you know, I can't leave my cell, right? I can't do what I want to do. And just that loss of freedom. I remember having conversations with myself that, you know, it's going to be different this time, right? I'm going to try something different when I get out. And I would get out, and for the next 10 years, that was my pattern. I would get out with good intentions and motives, and end up right back. And the time in between got shorter and shorter. So I would get out, parole somewhere, and try to get a job, you know, try to do right. And sometimes I lasted a week, sometimes I lasted 3 months before I would go back to the drugs and the alcohol. And, you know, I knew I was beyond stopping, right? I would tell you that I wanted to stop and I would change with my mouth, but inside my head, I knew that I wasn't capable of change.
Yeah.
I knew that I was lying to myself, but yet I couldn't be honest with other people. And you know, so I would get out, and like I said, I'd have firm resolutions often where I was not going to do drugs and alcohol. And slowly but surely, I would drift back into that. Oftentimes, I would get invited to a party or an event, and say I would just have one. Well, for a guy like me, when I have one, I'm no longer thinking about what I have to do tomorrow, or what time I have to be home, or what bills are due. I'm thinking about, how am I going to keep this going, right? Where am I going to find more, and how can I do this until I pass out? And that's how my mind's different than normal people that aren't, you know, in recovery. And so let's fast forward a little bit. So my 5th time incarcerated, I burnt my life to the ground, right? My family's done with my crap. You know, I've never really held a job. You know, I've lied, I've cheated my way through life, and it's my 5th time incarcerated. I was only out 2 months. I started drinking, blacked out, caught a new case and a violation. So, you know, I'm at a breaking point, right? I'm at a place in my life where there is no more moves, right? There's no more people to lie to. You know, there's no more women to use. My family's, the gig's up, right? My family's on to me. I've manipulated everybody I could. And, you know, prior to that, I was always good at, or thought I was good at, surrounding myself with people that were worse than me, right?
Yeah.
Real junkies, real drug addicts. And before I knew it, this time I was hyper aware that I had become exactly who I never wanted to be, right? I never wanted to be that person. And here I was. So I get back to prison, and you know, a lot of guys that I was doing time with, they thought I went to SEG, and I went all the way home and came all the way back, you know. Dude, I was so humiliated. I was so hopeless. I'll never forget how hopeless I felt, because I knew at that time that this is what I was gonna do for the rest of my life if something didn't change. right? I had never had that moment of clarity where, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to get out of this situation. So a couple days back in prison, I said a prayer. I had never really went to church or been exposed to the church. Like I can remember as a kid, my dad would take me once in a while, but I never, I wasn't raised in the church. I didn't know the Bible. My idea of God was kind of like a genie. Like I said a lot of foxhole prayers, mainly for a bond reduction or a furlough or
Yeah.
God get me out of this one or
Yeah.
God, please don't let them find out what I did. But this time it was different, man. I was at a place in my life, like I said, where if something didn't change, I was just going to be in and out of prison for the rest of my life. I knew that somehow, some way, I knew that. And little did I know at that time that everything had to change, right? My mind, where I was at in my life, I just thought something had to change, right? My circumstances, my environment, my hometown, I had to get out of there. Little did I know I needed a whole new heart, man. I needed a mind transformation. I needed to be reborn. And so I said, God, if you're real, show me you're real. And like I said, that was the first sincere, genuine prayer I had ever said. And, nothing happened right away. Like there was no lightning or loud boom. But pretty quickly, I got moved to a new housing unit. And it was my fifth time incarcerated. So at that time, I didn't qualify for any good time. But they moved me to the drug unit, the drug and alcohol unit. And I wasn't connecting the two. I'm not that smart, right, to know that God's working in my life, at least at that time. And so I started going to church in the penitentiary, not for the right reasons at first, just to get out of my cell, really. And I started to attend some 12-step groups in there. There was a little guy named Bill, and he would come in on Tuesdays and Thursdays and bring the meeting. So in church, something began to happen, man. I started to hear things that I had never really heard before, from the preachers and the teachers and the chaplain. And the other thing that was very apparent to me is that the other inmates that appeared to be involved, man, they were different, right? They were smiling, they were happy, and I wasn't, right? I was still very much depressed, thinking about myself, my situation, how screwed I was. And so, I just kept doing that, right? I kept going to church, and before you know it, I started reading my Bible, and the words, they just weren't words anymore, man. Something started to happen, right? I started to have some dreams. I started to think about all the people I had hurt. I started to think about all the times I should have been dead and I wasn't dead. I started to think about those things. And I had never really thought about those things, right? Because all of my life, I've been really good at, self-preservation. I lived in this fantasy world for so long because I don't want to feel any of those feelings. I don't want to be honest about what I did. I don't want to own any of my BS. So I'll just pretend it's not real. And then compound that with my alcoholism and drug addiction, I'll blame you, right?
Yeah.
I'll become the victim real quick. That way I don't have to take ownership for any of it. So that stuff began to change, right? I started to think about maybe my parents did the best they could with what they had, right? Maybe it's not their fault. Maybe it's not my hometown. Maybe the cops don't have my face in their car, and every time they see me, they arrest me for fun, right? So what began to happen is I started to wake up spiritually, and I didn't know that was happening, but I started to have these moments of clarity where I could see my situation in my life for what it really was instead of what I would make up, right? I was beginning to wake up spiritually. And so I fast forward, I'm well, let me just say this, in the penitentiary, especially from where I was, right? I used to make hooch and fight and do drugs when I could and gamble. And now I'm trying to do something different. And so I'm getting called a snitch, and I'm working for AI or IA, internal affairs, and just all the crazy stuff. And I didn't know it then, but I know it now. And that's what happens, right? Whenever you're in a place or a circumstance or a situation, you start to become somebody different. You're the oddball, right? You're the deviant. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that was happening. So, like a good new Christian, I'm judging everyone in the room, right? I'm in the day room with my Bible and my coffee, and I'm holier than thou. And I got 3 minutes in the Bible. I've only been saved for a couple days. And something happened, man. I had a spiritual experience. I'm judging all these guys, and it was like a haze or a fog that came over the room. And I heard God say, "Never have I used captivity to punish my children. I've always used captivity to restore and rescue my children." And I dropped my Bible, and I'm like, I'm crying. Yeah. But I needed to know that. And things like that kept happening. Right? I kept having these moments where the other thing that was happening I didn't know at that time, prior to that incarceration, I was good at writing letters and getting on the phone and telling people what they wanted to hear and trying to get a parole date and some money. I wasn't doing that, not intentionally, but that had stopped happening, to the point where my dad and the stepmom, they're like, "Are you okay? We haven't heard from you, and like, you're not begging for money and telling us it's going to be different this time. Like, what's going on?" I'm like, "I don't really know. I don't know why I'm doing that, really." Like I was so caught up in the Bible and the fellowship and the meeting that I just my priorities started to change a little bit, right? I wasn't trying to prove points and tell you how I was changing, and so they reached out. They're like, "What's going on?" So it's almost time for me to parole out, right? I know in my heart of hearts I'm not supposed to go back home. I've done that 4 other times, and I fall on my face every time. So I have no idea where I'm going to go. So, I'm starting to have some hope now. I'm having these experiences with God. I know He's real. There's no more denying that He's not real. Even though I'm incarcerated, man, I'm starting to experience some freedom, not from the physical, but I'm starting to have some mental clarity. I'm not wrapped up in shame and guilt and remorse. And so I scheduled some time with the chaplain. I'm really counting on God to make a way for me. I'm just really putting everything in His hands at this point. And I meet with the chaplain, and I tell her everything, right? I tell her all the rotten, dirty things I had ever done, all the childhood trauma, all the everything. I just knew that I had to get that stuff out. And she didn't judge me. She didn't do any of that, man. We prayed, and that was that. At the end of that meeting, she asked me what my plan is. I think she kind of knew my parole date was coming up. And I was like, I don't know where I'm supposed to go. And she told me about a Christian discipleship program here in Springfield. I had never been to Springfield. I don't know anybody in Springfield. But at this point, I'm convinced that, doing anything different is probably the right thing to do, right? I'm trying to question things, and I'm really trying to believe that if this is good and this came not as a result of my forcing, it's probably God. So I fill out the paperwork. They come see me. They interview me. They accept me. They pick me up at the gates, and I get to Springfield. And this November, I've been out 15 years. Actually, it's crazy. And so I get to Springfield. I don't have anything, man. No ID, no driver's license, no clothes, nothing. But I'm in the Christian discipleship program. We're structured. Every night we're reading the Bible or doing service, or there's something every night. We're keeping us busy. But the other two components of that program were you had to get a job and you had to join a church. So I began the pursuit. I'm visiting some churches. That's all good. The job thing was really difficult. I got I got 6 felony convictions. I've been to prison 5 times. I don't have a driver's license. I really don't have any work history. So I'm literally going door to door, business to business, and applying, and no one's calling me back. You know, as you can imagine, I'm not super attractive on paper, right? My resume is not good at this time. And about 2 months, I'm getting discouraged. I'm getting really discouraged. And about 2 months into that job, I get a call from the Salvation Army, and they invite me in for an interview. And I tell them exactly who I am and what I've done, and because I can't at this point. I'm so discouraged and down. Like, let's just get to the point, right? Let's cut to the chase. That way you can tell me no. And they didn't tell me no. In fact, they offered me the position in the warehouse, sorting donations for minimum wage. And boy, I was over the moon, excited and happy. And I didn't know that the Salvation Army was a faith-based drug and alcohol rehab for men. I had no idea. So I get this job, and they're giving me a tour, and I'm like seeing crosses and scripture and a chapel, and I'm like, okay, this is different. And it was very apparent that God put me there. He wanted me there. 6 months into that job, I got an opportunity to be promoted to production supervisor. And what that would mean is I would now be responsible for 5 different stores in 3 different cities, and I would be supervising about 60 people. And I had no idea what I was doing. I literally had no idea what I was doing. But thankfully, I had some good guys in my life. I was in that discipleship program, and
You have your TV on?
No, you might mute while I'm talking. It might help. Does that help? Good. Okay. So I get promoted. I have no idea what I'm doing on this job, but I'm with guys that are like me, right? I'm in the Salvation Army, and we're playing Christian music, and it's exactly where God wanted me to be. I know that for sure. So just over a year into that position, administration changed, and I was terminated effectively. Right. I had been promoted twice. I had done nothing to deserve that. And I'm just baffled. Right. I can't understand why or how this is happening. About 2 weeks after that, I get a call, and they want me to, they're asking me if I would be interested in doing a men's meeting on Sunday nights. And I'm like, no way, you guys just fired me. Right. But I was like, let me pray about it. So long story short, I couldn't do that meeting and be a part of that group as an employee, right? There was no fraternization with the beneficiaries. So I ended up doing that meeting for about 5 years, and then got an opportunity and got asked to serve on the advisory board. And I've been serving with the Salvation Army ever since, right? Almost, over 10 years now. And, I've been the chairman of the board, vice chairman, fundraising chair, that organization is so important to me personally and so many other people, because they truly are the hands and feet of Jesus Christ, right? Not only that, but they gave me an opportunity when no one else would. So, I'll serve with them and support them until the day I die in some way. So, trying to live life and stay sober, I had no idea what I was doing, right? I had a little bit of Jesus and some scriptures memorized, but I had no idea how to live life. My family still wants nothing to do with me, and I can't blame them. I have to go to court, right? Because when I was incarcerated, the mother of my 2 oldest children, she had gotten some trouble. So Department of Family Services is involved in our life, and they're going to terminate my parental rights because I'm unfit, right? I don't have a job. I don't have a house. I've been in and out of prison, and I can't blame them. I can't blame them. So I'm in this program, I'm working, I go to court, and the advocate lady, her name was Hope. And I'll never forget this. Other than that prayer and being walking with the Lord and having this job, nothing significant had really changed in my life that I thought. Hope says to me, the state's wanting to terminate your parental rights. And at this point, I'm trying to practice acceptance, and I understand, right? There's nothing I can do. My hands are tied here. All of a sudden, she says, I don't know what's different about you, but there's something different. And we're going to fight. We're going to fight to keep your parental rights intact. And I was floored. I'm like, I had done nothing other than put one foot in front of the other, right? And try to walk with the Lord. And God made a way. And the state granted it, right? The judge was in agreement, and there was no way that I could have orchestrated that with all of my self-will and might. And it was definitely God, right? God saw fit to make a way. And I have a bunch of those stories, and I know we're short on time, but so let me try to speed this up. Like I said, I had went in and out of rehab as a young man and visited some 12-step programs, but I had never really committed. So, between the inside and the outside, 15 months inside my last time and 15 months outside, I ended up putting together 3 years of sobriety. And I got involved in a relationship, and I never had a sponsor. I never worked the steps, and I fell on my face, right? I relapsed the middle of 2013, and I went to rehab, February of 2014. And like I said, my sobriety date's April 16th of 2014. That relapse was different, right? Because I've experienced God. I know there's a better way to live, and yet I still did what I didn't want to do, right? I still gave in to that thought and the desire. And I'm going to break that down a little bit. Here's what had happened. All of my life, I've been prone to this image and this facade of who I want people to believe I am. And that guy's never lined up, right? You take your eyes off me, I'm trying to steal, I'm trying to lie, I'm trying to manipulate. And slowly but surely through that stint of recovery, that began to happen. The girl I was dating, I found out she was using, one thing after another, right? And I never told a soul. I began to pretend again, right? I began to project this image and this facade again, right? We were a happy couple. Everything was good. And it wasn't, right? I was dying inside from untreated alcoholism, and I didn't know it. So she went to rehab. I ended up going to rehab. I had never went to rehab or quit using drugs and alcohol without handcuffs, right? So I still had my job. At that time, I'm working for a cell phone dealership. So I get to rehab. I'm really, really sick. And about 3 days in, I prayed again, and I asked God for forgiveness, and I repented. And, I was convinced as soon as I started feeling better, I should leave, right? Because that's what we do. We convince ourselves of some silly stuff sometimes. And I had a little bit of money in the bank. But the counselor I had there, she did something not too many people have ever done in my life. And she saw me for who I was. She said, "Why do you always stand with your back against the wall when there's a crowd of people?" And I'm like, "Who are you talking to, lady?" Right? My arrogance, my attitude. And she just began to break me down day by day, right? She began to call me out on my crap. She began to question my identity, really. And so I stuck it out and completed that rehab program and went to an Oxford house and stayed there for 13 months and done everything completely different, right? I started going to meetings, and not just going to meetings, but really working hard to become a part of. I knew that that I couldn't do this on my own, right? I knew that I couldn't do it with just God. I knew that I had to have something more. And I found a sponsor that was not going to let me get away with much. And, he would hold me accountable, but also encourage me, right? He would give me all of his time and everything I needed, but he would also call me out whenever I needed to be called out. And, I began to recover from that hopeless state of mind and body. And, today, man, life is crazy, right? Life is nothing like I ever thought it would be. After 4 years of being sober, I finally got a driver's license, and the kids the state we're trying to take, I get to be an active father, a present father in their life. I got married. I did what they tell us never to do. I met a girl in the program, and the crazy thing was neither one of us were interested in each other, man. We had both been through some really bad relationships and breakups, and both newly sober. And we kept bumping into each other at these events, right? At campouts and with crowds. And, we became friends before we ever were intimate with one another. And I had never done that in my whole entire life, right? She's my best friend today. So, we have a little girl, and, I get to live this life that sometimes I don't even recognize, man. Like, I wake up sober, and I immediately thank God for the life I have today, because, if I would have, we hear this all the time, but, if I would have wrote down everything I wanted out of life, I would have sold myself so short, because I don't know what I want, right? I don't know what's best for me. I don't know what's on the horizon, or how God's going to use that difficult person or that difficult situation to bring something out of me and change me. I just don't know all that stuff, because I'm not that smart. But today I get to work with other guys and mentor other men. And, I told you when I got to Springfield, I couldn't find a job. Now, part of my job is I help other people find jobs. So God is crazy cool, and he'll do things that'll just blow your mind. I get to go places and do things that, just were not possible, right? I didn't have access to this life when I was living in that bondage, when I was controlled by drugs and alcohol. I couldn't be this guy. No matter how hard I tried or how bad I wanted to be different, I couldn't be this guy. And now today, I get to be the same person here as I am behind closed doors, as I am at work. And that's pretty cool, right? That's the freedom that comes as a result of asking for help, surrendering to God, and becoming a part of something, right? The group continues to show me how to live, and help me be a good member of society, right? I haven't had to go to court or pay fines or do any of that stuff, man, because God and the 12-step group I'm a part of. So I imagine we're getting close on time, so I just want to kind of wrap up with if you're new to the program, or new to recovery, or new to church, find somebody that you admire, and ask them for help, and your life will never be the same. That's all I got.
Amen, man. What a good testimony. I haven't heard that testimony, Mike. You talked about becoming somebody different, right there towards the end. And I was the same way. When we're making decisions that we normally wouldn't make, and you're like, who am I?
Yeah.
Right. I would have really gone the other way a year ago or 2 years ago. So every morning I ask God to give me the courage to make good decisions, and he does. And it just comes natural now. Like if somebody pops up from my past, on Messenger, wants to talk, and I'm able to just not even respond, right? I'm not that smart, like you say. God has really changed me from his side. He did you, and we tend to make better decisions when we ask God for help. He helps. He guides our decision making, and we're becoming somebody we don't know. And in that same turn, we have to be patient with ourselves as well, because we are becoming somebody we don't know every day.
Yeah.
And the ability to be being okay with being bored or being lonely, some of that you have to be okay with that. But I think when you have God truly in your life, that there's no loneliness. Recently had a couple good friends of mine go back out, and it's really, for some reason, it's really rocked me this time. Because I know we only got so many in us, and I just don't want to get that call. I don't want to hear that news, So just keep everybody who's sick and suffering, everybody who's listening, keep people in your prayers, man, because there's no, if you don't put God first every day, it's impossible. Yeah. It's impossible. When you start doing your own will,
Mhm.
We'll be right back where we started, and
Yeah.
even worse.
My sponsor always told me, whatever we put before our sobriety, we're going to lose. Right. And
Yeah,
I've always held on to that. Like, God and God's first in my life, but sobriety is like possible, right? Because of God. So they're neck and neck. But I love my wife. I love my job. I love my kids. But
yeah.
I can't be a father and a husband and an employee if I'm not sober. Right.
Amen.
So that's my commitment. And regardless of how I feel or what I think, right, that's my commitment. So I have to show up. I have to get dressed and show up every day. And I tell you what, man, the times that I didn't want to go or was trying to talk myself out of it, whenever I've got up, showed up, dressed up, and went, I've always felt better. I've always heard something that I needed to hear. So, and then the other thing I thought about, Craig, is, I remember this stint of sobriety, that change you're talking about when that was happening. I remember in my head thinking, man, who are you, dude? Like,
Yeah,
you're a fraud, you're a hypocrite, right? That inner critic and that self-sabotage that's been with me my whole life. Over time, that voice has got quieter and quieter, right?
mhm.
And the truth of God has gotten louder and louder. And that's what happens, right? If we can stick and stay and grow and change, eventually that person that wants to burn your life to the ground starts to go away a little bit, right?
Yeah,
It's not completely gone, but I'm not the person I was all those years
yeah,
ago, right? My desires are different. I'm not plotting and scheming. If I do mess up or do something wrong, man, I'm really aware of it and I have to do something about it, right? Because it eats
yeah.
me up. And that's the evidence of the Holy Spirit and God working in our lives, right? And yeah, I hear you loud and clear on, I hear your heart on guys, and it's heartbreaking, because sometimes I just want to shake a person like, dude, come on, man. Like, you got
But we
so
were
much.
that guy. We were that guy at
I
one
know.
time,
That's what I was
right?
just going to say, man. And then I have to remember where I came from. And but for the
Yeah,
grace of God, right? But for the grace of God, that's me. A few bad decisions, not praying, not staying in the middle of the boat. Man, I'm
yep,
right. I'm right back within that same mess.
yep. Well done, brother. Well done.
Thank,
Thank you so much.
yeah,
Let
you're
me do
welcome.
a
Appreciate
couple
it.
of announcements here real quick. Bro, I love you, man. Thank you for doing this. Don't
Yeah.
ever change, bro. And there's a lot of people watching. I'm watching. You are a big, big reason I'm still, did I even give it a thought to even come back, right? I really admire the way, you live your life and how you help so many people. So thank you again.
You're
Um,
welcome, bro.
let
Appreciate
me
it.
do a couple announcements here real quick, then we'll get
Okay.
off here. So tonight, like usual, we've got church, um, 3253 South 4th Street. I haven't seen you there in a while, Mike.
I
And I
know.
know I talked to Rachel, and Rachel, you guys should come for sure. 6 o'clock, 3253 South 4th Street. It's a great time. And that's another thing. I cannot wait these days. I cannot wait to get to church or do
Mm,
something at the church. That never used to be me. I always used to dread going to church because I had to, but I just cannot wait to get to church and get around my people, you
mm,
know.
yeah.
Also, the Hop ladies and the BYO ladies have the Be Still Women's Retreat Saturday, April 11th, 9 to 1. Refreshments provided. If you have any questions, ask Danielle or Jen Gall or any of
Mm.
the ladies, Jill, Robin, and they will get you in the right direction. And that's it. That's all I got. Brother,
Can
thanks again.
can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
Sorry. You were talking earlier about Messenger and guys reaching out. What came to my mind is, light doesn't have anything in common with darkness, right?
Right.
So the more I grow in my faith walk and my recovery walk, that darkness is not, it runs from the light, right? So that gets easier. That struggle gets easier. And I think a lot of us in early recovery, we don't give ourselves enough time. And because eventually they stop reaching out, right? They don't want to see you because that makes them look at them, right?
Yeah.
If they see you doing good and you're positive, they don't want to be around that nonsense. I know I did when I was in my mess.
No.
I don't want to see anybody doing better than me. So I think I think it's just important for people that are maybe newly sober to know that eventually you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I keep, I have really blocked a lot of the people that really I don't think has any. I mean, I don't want to say that I have no hope for, but uh, I have a lot of good friends that I've had to block, and I've had a lot of good friends that uh, I've still got it open so that so they can reach to me if they need to. I want to
Mhm.
still be that guy that, hey man, let's call Craig. He seems to be doing good, especially if they've lost all their hope. You know what I
Amen.
mean? I
Yeah.
want to be there. I want to be able to be um, send somebody in the right direction. You know, I know my boundaries, I know my limits, and God has given me that today. I know what I can't do.
Amen.
So yeah, it's a pretty easy decision these days. So, well, Mike, once again, thanks again.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, go do two things, everybody. Love God, love. Take care.
Take care.